Israel is not forgiving. Benjamin Netanyahu is delivering exactly what he promised. And this time, we aren't only talking about revenge, but annihilation. In recent days, Israel has taken out several of the leading figures of two of its greatest enemies, the terrorist groups Hamas in Palestine and Hezbollah in Lebanon. These operations are not random. These guys have been targets of Israel for a long time. But obviously, taking out so many in a short time frame is not a frequent occurrence. In fact, many of these casualties have occurred in the wake of an event that has shocked Israeli society. And we're no longer talking about 7th of October. On 28th of July, Hezbollah attacked the Israeli town of Majd al-Shams in the Golan Heights with missiles. Several of these missiles fell on a soccer field while many children and teenagers were playing there. 12 lost their lives. The images of the attack are so harsh that we cannot reproduce them here, but I assure you that they are terrible. We're talking about bodies torn apart by explosions in a scene of total devastation. By the way, it turns out that Majd al-Shams is a Druze Arab community, not a Jewish one. The point is that faced with such horror, the Israelis promised revenge against Hezbollah. And as we've already told you, this has not been long in coming. Israel unleashed an unprecedented succession of direct blows against the leadership of its two arch-enemies. This has made these groups very nervous, along with the Ayatollah's regime itself. Among other reasons, because Israel has eliminated important allies in Tehran. Some were even massacred by Mossad forces right inside the Persian capital. The tension has escalated so much that the United States and Israel consider it highly likely that a retaliatory operation by Iran will take place.
Iran and Hezbollah attack on Israel imminent, Blinken tells G7. Biden meets national security team as fears of Iran attack on Israel grow.
It appears Tehran wants to avenge all the casualties being carried out by Israeli intelligence. But above all, there is one that stands out above the rest. That of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, a guy who was largely responsible for bringing Hamas, a Sunni organization, and the Shiite regime of the Ayatollahs closer than ever before. And not only that, Haniyeh, who lived well protected in Qatar, was eliminated in Tehran itself during a visit to coordinate his efforts. As reported by the New York Times, the Israelis eliminated Haniyeh with a bomb in a Tehran guesthouse room that was under protection of the Revolutionary Guard, the creme de la creme of the Iranian security apparatus. In other words, the Israelis killed Haniyeh in a building guarded by the best of the forces loyal to the Ayatollahs and in the most exclusive area of the Iranian capital. You can imagine the embarrassment. The message this operation has sent is that there is no safe place, even in Iran, that escapes Mossad's control, or that there are many more internal cracks in Iran than it appears. Of course, either scenario is bad for the regime and its image of supreme power. Well, the situation has escalated so much that some influential voices in Israel have been discussing for days the possibility of Israel carrying out a preemptive strike against Iran to defuse the bulk of any threat. You know the old saying, the early bird catches the worm. The problem, of course, is that if this were to happen, the risk of escalation would be enormous, and both countries could become embroiled in a full-scale war. In any case, what is certain to happen in the coming days is that the attacks by Iran's armed forces will intensify in the area, particularly by Hezbollah. In fact, it's already happening.
19 wounded following drone attack in Western Galilee. One drone was intercepted and others impacted south of Nahariya, wounding civilians.
VisualPolitik community, everything indicates that Hezbollah will continue to attack and could do so in a harsher way in the coming days. In the conflict with Israel that Hamas unleashed last year, all the red lines we have understood so far are being crossed, both by Israel and by its own enemies. We're seeing an unprecedented level of destruction, threats, and attacks. Of course, the brunt is being borne by Hamas. These days, the top echelon of this Palestinian group is full of names of deceased members who have yet to be replaced. And along with them, little by little, names of former acquaintances who are still alive are occupying the highest positions. This is, for example, the case of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of the group in Gaza, who belongs to the most radical wing of the organization. Well, he has become the new leader of Hamas. We're talking about a guy who was actively involved in the planning of the 7th of October attack on Israel, and who is no doubt also on Israel's list of targets for elimination. VisualPolitik viewers, watching the news these days is mostly witnessing fears around Iran's possible response. A response that some believe may have nothing to do with that of last April. Do you remember the Iranian drone and missile attack against Israel after the Israeli army had attacked an Iranian consulate in Damascus, killing important officers of the Revolutionary Guard, among them a senior commander? Do you remember that? Well, on that occasion, both the Iranian attack and the Israeli response seemed very measured, almost like theatre, so that the responses would not cause major damage, and thus the matter would not go any further. In fact, the Iranian attack gave the impression that it was designed so that it could be intercepted without major problems by the Israeli air defenses, as if they had said, "Hey guys, we just sent the missiles, get ready to receive them." Yet, many analysts and experts now believe that following the latest developments, Iran's position would be greatly weakened if the response is so lukewarm again. Something along the lines of, "You've been threatening everyone for years. How can the rest of the Islamic groups trust your leadership and protection?" And it's precisely because of this that many see possible drums of war. And remember, this is not a far-fetched hypothesis. As a matter of fact, Blinken himself, the US Secretary of State, has sounded the alarm, and Uncle Sam has further strengthened its presence in the region. In fact, the reasons things have not already gone further is possibly due to the strong deterrent force that the Biden administration has deployed in the area.
US deploys ships and fighter jets to Middle East as Israel braces for Iran attack.
And that's not all. Last Monday night, Iranian-backed Iraqi militias attacked the joint US-Iraqi airbase at Ain al-Assad with missiles, wounding several US soldiers. This is a base that has seen attempted attacks several times since last October, but this week's attack was perhaps the most significant in recent times. These were warning shots. And so, faced with this situation, VisualPolitik has asked several questions. Is Iran really ready to unleash an open war with Israel? To what extent is a full-scale war likely? What role do the armed branches of the Revolutionary Guard play here? What the hell can we expect? Well, we're about to tell you all about it.
Will Iran attack?
Every time news of a possible war between Israel and Iran breaks out, not only does the whole world tremble, but Israel in particular shakes in its boots. Because while Israel is clearly stronger, Iran's military strength is no joke either. The Islamic Republic is home to the largest arsenal of ballistic missiles in the Middle East. We're talking about more than 3,000 projectiles that in many cases have a range of up to 2,000 kilometers, or 1,243 miles. That's more than enough to reach the Jewish state. And not only that, Iran also has a vast arsenal of drones, many very cheap and quick to produce, and which are designed to cause great damage and above all, enormous psychological terror. Drones that, as we've already told you many times, are being intensively used by Russia in Ukraine. Well, if an Iranian attack against Israel were to take place, it would surely be using these types of weapons. The question is, would it be a direct attack from Iranian territory, or would we be talking about something else? VisualPolitik community, this is the most important issue. This is where the debate, the tension, and the danger lies. For the purposes of warfare, attacking Israel from Iranian soil is not the same as attacking it from closer territories. Logically, the reaction time and countermeasures would be completely different. For example, as we commented earlier, in April, Iran launched some 330 drones and missiles that were mostly neutralized before even entering Israeli airspace. At the time, both the United States and other Western allies, as well as some Arab countries such as Jordan, were prepared to shoot down projectiles aimed at Israel. In fact, Jordan has already warned that if its airspace is violated, it will do its utmost to shoot down these missiles as it did in April.
Jordan Air Force shoots down Iranian drones flying over to Israel.
Now, what does all this mean? Well, for such an attack to succeed this time, the number of drones and missiles Iran would have to launch at the same time would be enormous, much larger than the attack last April. We're talking thousands of units, a veritable firestorm in the Middle East. And although no one has a crystal ball, the fact is that today, the probability of Iran opting for a massive attack with thousands of projectiles launched from its territory is low. Too many would be lost along the way, and the effect in Israel would be limited. It would be a big loss of equipment for a very small gain. Given the distance, the Israelis know many hours in advance what is heading their way, which allows them to activate their defense systems, such as the famous Iron Dome, evacuate sensitive areas, and seek countermeasures. In short, it allows them to be alert, prepared, and to avoid the chaos that a surprise attack always entails. Therefore, if Iran's intention is really to cause significant damage to Israel, attacking from its territory with conventional weapons does not seem to be the best option, because that would also mean an automatic escalation of the conflict. Attacking from Iran with a massive missile launch actually planned to do damage would justify military intervention by Israel, and probably the United States. It would also enable some Arab countries to formally or informally allow these two countries to use their airspace to carry out these operations. And to top it all off, while Israel could seek successive strikes, the Iranian possibility of mass missile launches is limited. Basically, because they would exhaust their stock of missiles very quickly. A stock which, let's not forget, is their greatest deterrent force right now. In other words, they would run the risk of being left totally exposed. There could even be a preemptive strike that would be terrible for the Ayatollahs. And one thing they have made clear in Jerusalem in recent months is that their hand is no longer shaking. In any case, Israel would probably strike in a very cinematic way. In fact, Israel, unlike Iran, has modern F-35 fighters capable of performing missions of this type, and also has KC-46 refueling tankers that would allow stealth attacks deep inside Iranian territory. Indeed, there is some consensus that with the weaponry Israel has currently at its disposal, it wouldn't be too complicated to hit sensitive targets in Iran, including the infrastructure of the military nuclear program inside the Persian country. This could, of course, greatly delay the development of the nuclear bomb so longed for by the Ayatollah's regime. Also, don't forget, it's an open secret that Israel has nuclear weapons. Who knows, Netanyahu might be willing to use some low-intensity device to nip Iran's nuclear program in the bud. And VisualPolitik community, evidently, all of what we're telling you is known in Tehran. Just as they know that an escalation of the conflict to the level of a war would also have enormous consequences at home. And here we have to remember that the internal situation of the Iranian regime has not been the best for some years now. More and more Iranians are coming out in protest, and they are doing so with less and less fear. It would be akin to lighting another fuse in a regime that has been teetering for years between civilian protests and military repression. So why do it? It wouldn't make any sense. In fact, let's be very clear about one thing. Whatever the Iranian response, it will be sufficiently well thought out not to be a self-immolation, and the regime knows its limit. So in our judgment, and in line with what many military analysts are saying these days, a direct Iranian attack is unlikely, at least a serious one. Not like last April's pantomime. But then, what else could happen? Well, the danger is much closer. No need to look at Iran. The Israelis have a threat very close to home. Naturally, we're talking about HEZBOLLAH, an organization that controls southern Lebanon, a region bordering Israel, and one that could receive a whole catalogue of Iranian weapons to carry out a savage attack. In Yemen, we have the Houthis, who were also involved in the April attack and may try again. Then there is the al-Assad regime in Syria, which at a bad time could also help Iran to attack from its territory. On top of these, we can also find militias such as the Shiite groups in Iraq that are affiliated with Iran. Now, what would a major multi-pronged attack on Israel organized by Iran look like? Is it realistic? Who would be the protagonist? Well, let's take a look.
The regime's bully.
We told you about it in a past video that will link for you in the description. Of all the enemy groups Israel faces, there is one that stands out above all others. I am talking, of course, about Hezbollah. This terrorist group is considered the strongest and best armed non-state actor in the world. But to see it clearly, check this out. We're talking about 20,000 active soldiers, between 20 and 30,000 additional reservists, and up to 200,000 missiles and rockets provided, naturally, by Iran. What's more, Hezbollah has extensive battlefield experience. In fact, this organization has not only already confronted Israel in the past, but has played a key role in Syria in keeping the al-Assad regime afloat. In return for their support to the Syrian regime, they not only got access to battle tanks such as the T-72s, T-54s, and T-62s, but also combat experience at the level of a quasi-professional military force. Well, here, yes, a Hezbollah attack could prove fatal for Israel. Let's see. Obviously, they would not break Israel, but if the Lebanese group were to unleash its full force on Israel, the damage would far exceed anything seen recently. On top of that, let's not forget, unlike the Iranian armed forces, Hezbollah could carry out ground incursions, attacks, and bombings inside Israel. Remember that the group is already deployed along the border. In fact, proximity would be one of its greatest assets. Hezbollah's rockets and missiles reach Israel so quickly that many of them ending up falling in Israeli territory because there is no time to intercept them. Also, keep in mind that if we combine proximity with saturation, a massive missile attack carried out by Hezbollah and prepared in advance by Iran could leave a long trail of casualties and fatalities throughout Israel. However, while it's true that the probability of success for Iran attacking through Hezbollah would be higher, the risks would not disappear. First of all, because although Hezbollah has anti-aircraft systems such as the Misag 1 and 2 or the Zu-23, there's no doubt that the Israeli Air Force has the capacity to attack any point in Lebanon with total ease. It would also be very easy for the IDF to conduct a ground invasion in southern Lebanon, the area where mainly Hezbollah operates, replicating in a way the operation they are conducting in Gaza. And this is where we get to the crux of the matter. The problem, VisualPolitik community, is not whether or not Israel could repel the threat from Hezbollah, but whether this scenario would not also be terrifying for Jerusalem. Getting into another big military front when you are not yet done with Hamas in Gaza? This could prolong the state of the war, and it's not at all clear to what extent this effort would be in Israel's interest. Neither due to the casualties, nor because of the social cost and protests it would entail, nor because of the economic cost and the country's international standing. In fact, if Israel has not unilaterally attacked Hezbollah, it is precisely because of all these costs that the operation would entail. Be that as it may, what seems likely is that, one way or another, Iran's armed branches will seek revenge on Israel. An attack may be imminent. But for now, and let's hope we're not mistaken, an escalation of open warfare between Iran and Israel doesn't seem likely. Of course, we're going to follow very closely everything that happens in these locations, and we'll tell you about it here on VisualPolitik. But in the meantime, it's your turn. How do you think the Iranian punishment for the removal of Ismail Haniyeh will play out? Will there be a direct attack, or will Iran use its puppets in the region? Do you think it's possible we'll be witnessing a full-scale war in the Middle East between Israel and Iran? Well, leave us your opinions here below, and let's start a debate. But first, and very importantly, if you like this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to VisualPolitik so you don't miss any news. As always, thank you very much for being there. All the best. I'll see you next time.